In Johannesburg, Zaniel's life was built on hard work. At only 25, she cleaned houses around the city just to survive. Every morning, she carried her bucket, gloves, and mop, moving from one house to another. The work was tiring, but she did it with pride because it kept food on the table and paid her rent. She never complained, even when her hands ached or when people looked down on her. Her sister Linda, however, lived a life of glamour. She loved expensive handbags, luxury clothes, and diamonds. Whenever she saw Zaniel coming home tired and dusty, she would smirk. "Imagine living like that," she often said. "While I enjoy life, you scrub floors like a servant." Zaniel never replied. Her silence was her shield. One weekend, the family attended a beautiful wedding at a grand hotel. The hall sparkled with chandeliers, music played, and guests danced in elegant clothes. Linda arrived shining the brightest, wearing her famous diamond necklace. She made sure to show it off, touching it often so people would notice. Zaniel, dressed in a simple borrowed dress, sat quietly at the back, happy just to celebrate with family. But suddenly, in the middle of the night, Linda screamed. Her hands flew to her neck. "My necklace! My diamond necklace is gone." The music stopped. Guests froze. Then Linda's eyes locked on Zaniel. "It must be her," she shouted. "She's always jealous, always desperate for money. Who else would steal?" The crowd turned, whispers spreading like fire. "Maybe she took it. She cleans for money after all." Zaniel's heart pounded. Her face burned with shame as eyes pierced through her. She opened her mouth to speak, but her words drowned in the heavy silence. To be accused like that, in front of hundreds of people, crushed her spirit. She wanted to run, but her legs felt too heavy. Days later, the hotel manager called the family back. The security team had checked the CCTV cameras. When the footage played, the truth silenced everyone. Linda herself had walked to the bathroom, unclasped her necklace, and tucked it into her purse. She had staged the entire scene, sacrificing her own dignity just to shame her sister. Gasps filled the room. Some relatives shook their heads in disbelief, others avoided looking at Zaniel out of guilt. Linda's lies were out, and her pride shattered. Zaniel stood quietly, tears sliding down her face. But this time, the tears were not from humiliation, they were from relief. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't curse her sister. She simply walked away, her dignity brighter than any diamond. And in that moment, everyone realized the truth. It was not wealth or jewels that made a woman shine, but her honesty and strength. In Lagos, Chika's days began before sunrise. She tied her apron tightly, stepped into the hotel kitchen, and worked tirelessly until late into the night. She chopped vegetables, stirred steaming pots, and served meals for strangers while sweat rolled down her back. The job was tough, but she was proud of it. Her discipline kept her going. She never missed a shift, never complained, and always sent part of her pay home. Her younger sister Ifeoma, however, didn't see the value in such hard work. She was jealous of Chika's focus and the quiet respect she earned from others. "All you do is smell like onions and smoke," Ifeoma would sneer. "What kind of life is that?" She preferred makeup, selfies, and showing off jewelry on social media, often calling herself the star of the family. That Christmas, the family gathered for lunch. The house was filled with laughter, music, and the smell of roasted chicken. Ifeoma walked in late, her gold necklace glittering against her dress. She made sure everyone noticed, tilting her head every time she spoke. Chika, tired from a long shift the night before, simply helped set the table and serve drinks, her hands moving quickly, her heart happy to be home. But suddenly, Ifeoma gasped loudly. Her fingers flew to her neck. "My necklace! It's gone." The room went silent. Then her eyes narrowed at Chika. "It must be her. Who else? She's always working like a servant. Maybe she finally wanted something nice." Their parents exchanged looks, and within moments, their doubts turned into accusations. "Chika, how could you?" her mother asked, her voice trembling. "You shame us." Relatives whispered among themselves. Some nodded in agreement. Chika's chest tightened, her mouth dry. She wanted to scream that she would never steal, but the words stuck in her throat. The betrayal from her parents cut deeper than the accusation itself. Days later, the hotel manager called Chica aside. "You should see this," he said, showing her security footage from the Christmas Day event. The cameras had caught Ifioma sneaking into the kitchen, unclasping her necklace, and slipping it into her purse. She had staged everything, knowing their parents would believe her. When the truth was revealed, the family fell into heavy silence. Ifioma's face burned with shame. The same parents who had accused Chica couldn't meet her eyes. Tears slid down Chica's cheeks, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from relief. She didn't shout or demand apologies. She simply lifted her head and walked away, her dignity shining brighter than gold. And from that day, everyone understood. Chica's worth was not in jewelry or appearances, but in her honesty, strength, and unshakable discipline. In Cape Town, Ayanda's days were always full. She woke up early for classes at the university, then rushed to her part-time job at a cafe in the evenings. Her shoes were often worn out, her notebooks filled with scribbles from studying on the bus, and her hands smelled faintly of coffee. Life wasn't easy, but Ayanda believed in her dreams. She worked hard, knowing every sacrifice today would build her tomorrow. Her older sister Thembai couldn't understand that kind of hustle. Stylish and bold, Thembai loved expensive handbags, flashy clothes, and shiny jewelry. She often rolled her eyes at Ayanda. "Why stress yourself with school and that cheap cafe job?" she would ask. "Look at me. I live life, I enjoy it." Ayanda stayed quiet, refusing to let the words break her spirit. One weekend, the family attended a close friend's birthday party. The hall was decorated with balloons and bright lights. Music filled the air, and laughter echoed around the tables. Thembai walked in wearing a glittering necklace, making sure it caught everyone's eye. She leaned forward as she greeted people, showing it off. Ayanda arrived later, wearing a simple dress she had saved for months to buy. She greeted warmly, then helped serve food, happy just to be part of the celebration. But midway through the evening, Thembai screamed. Her hands clutched her neck. "My necklace, it's gone!" she cried dramatically. Gasps filled the hall. Before anyone could react, she turned to Ayanda and shouted, "It must be her. She's always struggling, always looking at what I have. Who else would take it?" The room shifted. Friends looked at Ayanda with suspicion. Some whispered, others nodded. Thembai's voice was loud, full of authority, and it drowned out Ayanda's silence. Ayanda's face burned, tears stung her eyes, but she couldn't speak. Being accused in front of friends, treated as if she was desperate and dishonest, broke her heart more than words could explain. Days later, the birthday host called Ayanda. He had checked the CCTV cameras in the hall. The footage was clear. Thembai herself had slipped off her necklace, tucked it into her handbag, and pretended it was stolen. She had planned it all, just to shame her younger sister. When the truth was shown, the same friends who doubted Ayanda fell silent. Thembai's proud face crumbled into shame. Ayanda's tears flowed, but they were tears of relief this time. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She simply stood taller, her honesty brighter than any jewelry. That night, people left the party with a lesson. Gold can shine for a moment, but dignity lasts forever. And Ayanda's dignity was untouchable. In Dakar, Mariam lived for her passion, cooking. She worked as a chef in a small restaurant, saving every franc she could to one day open her own catering business. She woke up before sunrise, chopping vegetables, stirring soups, and baking bread until her hands ached. Her clothes often smelled of spices, and her apron was always stained, but Mariam wore her hard work with pride. She believed that every dish she made was a step closer to her dream. Her sister Safia lived differently. She loved glitter, gold, and everything expensive. Jewelry was her weakness, and she bought it as if it were food. While Mariam was sweating in the kitchen, Safia flaunted her necklaces and bangles at parties. "You cook for people," she often teased. "I shine for people." Mariam only smiled, never letting the words pierce her heart. One evening, during a big family celebration, Mariam was in charge of the food. The hall smelled of grilled fish, jollof rice, and sweet desserts. Guests praised her cooking, clapping as she moved between tables. Sophia, dressed in silk, showed off a sparkling necklace, making sure everyone noticed. But just as the night reached its peak, Sophia screamed. Her hand went to her neck. "My necklace, it's gone!" Gasps filled the hall. Then, with sharp eyes, she pointed at Miriam. "Who else could it be? She's always covered in sweat, always desperate for money. Maybe she wanted to look rich for once." The whispers spread quickly. Some guests frowned, others nodded. Suddenly, all the compliments about Miriam's food disappeared into doubt. A relative muttered, "How can we trust her with catering if she steals from her own sister?" Miriam froze. Her chest tightened, tears burned her eyes, but she held them back. To lose her family's trust, to see her reputation crumble in a moment, hurt worse than any insult. She wanted to scream her innocence, but the shame was too heavy. Days later, the restaurant owner called Miriam in. He had checked the CCTV cameras from the celebration. The truth played out clearly on the screen. Sophia had walked to the restroom, unclasped her necklace, and tucked it into her purse. She hadn't been robbed. She had staged the entire drama to ruin Miriam's name. When the footage was shown to the family, silence filled the room. Sophia's proud face turned pale with shame. Guests who had doubted Miriam looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Miriam's tears finally fell, but this time they carried relief, not humiliation. She didn't argue. She didn't gloat. She simply stood tall, her honesty shining brighter than any jewelry. And from that day, everyone remembered the truth. Sophia wore gold, but Miriam carried something priceless: dignity. In Kampala, Nia worked as a teacher. She lived a simple life, always humble, always kind. Her joy came from teaching children, shaping their minds, and giving them hope for a better future. She didn't care for flashy things or expensive clothes. Her satisfaction came from seeing her students succeed. But her younger sister Layla was the opposite. Layla loved attention, fashion, and vanity. She wore bright dresses, carried the latest handbags, and made sure everyone noticed her glittering jewelry. One afternoon, during a graduation party at the school, both sisters were present. It was a day to celebrate the students, but somehow Layla made it about herself. She flaunted her necklace, a shiny piece she often bragged about. Everyone admired it, until suddenly it was gone. Gasps filled the hall. Layla clutched her neck and immediately pointed at Nia. "You must have taken it. You're always jealous of me," she shouted, her voice echoing through the room. Students, teachers, and parents turned to look at Nia. The woman who had always carried herself with dignity now stood frozen, her face burning with shame. She tried to explain, her voice trembling. "I would never do that." But Layla cut her off, her words sharp, making the crowd believe the worst. The humiliation was unbearable. Some parents whispered, some students lowered their heads in confusion, and Nia stood there crushed, betrayed by her own sister. But the school had CCTV cameras. Later, when the principal reviewed the footage, the truth came out. It wasn't Nia who touched the necklace. It was Layla herself. She had slipped it into her own purse, perhaps to stir drama, perhaps to gain pity. When the truth spread, people were shocked. The sister who taught kindness had been humiliated by the sister who only loved vanity. And the whole city now knew who truly carried beauty inside. Would you like me to expand this ending into a stronger viral closing line like the other stories? For example, something that would trend if it were a video caption.